We've seen in another lesson that Sage CRM is an easy to use and configure system. It is a system that allows a system administrator to add new fields that allow new types of data to be stored and to be able to then decide whether they want to keep using a particular field as well. Now, I want to be able to add 4 new fields into the company table, and I want to be able to discuss with you the different types of entry type that we're using. And for this, I'm going to be using just 4 different types: Advanced Search Select, Date Only, Currency Fields, and Selection Fields. And we're going to see the implications of choosing each of these. So I'm going to look at the Fields tab in the Customization area of the company table. And first of all, what I'm going to do here is, as we come to enter a new field, is I need to be able to select the entry type for the field. I need to ensure that it's got a column name, a caption, and then I'll set any other properties for the field that may vary based on the entry type that I choose. So this first field that I'm going to add is going to be an Advanced Search Select. And all these properties that you can see on the screen are actually fully described within the documentation within the Help Center. So it's very, very important that you know where you can get access to the help, and so we can start to populate the different properties on this screen. So what you see here is I've automatically filled in these fields names. So I've got the caption. I've also decided to put in the search entity that I've got in here, and you'll also see that I've added in a SQL clause to restrict the rows that are returned. So I've added all the basic information that I need for my Advanced Search Select, and so I'm going to select Save, and we've saved the field. You can see that onto the screen, and we can then choose to add a second field. Now here, this second field has been defined as a date only entry type, and this has changed the properties available. So some field properties are relevant for only certain entry types. Now, once I've chosen all of this again can be saved, and so the third field can be added. Now in this one, this is going to be a currency field, and this allows me to define the maximum credit to be extended to this company. All these fields are related to a credit check test, and so we can now come to adding in our fourth field. Now the final field is of type selection. Now this is going to need to have a new set of lookup values defined, and that's the option here, create new lookup. We could link it to an existing set of translations which provide the options, but here I'm creating a new set of options, and if I choose Save, we're moved on to the selection list definitions screen, and we can see that each option can be defined and then added into the selection list, and each one can be created as a translation until the list is completed. And you can see that I've just added in the additional 2 there. So we've got 4 options in our selection list, and I'll choose Save. And so now we have that field defined as our company credit check rating, and you can see that it's marked with a selection list, and there's a new little edit button next to that. So I've added, I finished adding in these 4 new fields into the company table, and the credit check agency field, comp credit check agency, this is defined in the database. It's going to be defined as a particular data type. This is a lookup to another company, so it's going to be storing a foreign key value. In this case, it will be an integer. So if we look down to the credit check date, that's going to be converted physically in the database to a date field. Now, the credit check maximum value is obviously holding a numeric, but we need to think that in the interface, when we've looked at currency fields elsewhere, currency fields have this 2-part element to them. They have the currency that's being used, and then also the actual value of the currency that's being stored. And the credit check rating here as well, we can see allows the idea of a selection field, and that's going to be, because it's holding largely text values, it will be an nvarchar. So in the interface, these all translate into something understandable. We can go and put these into a screen, and I already have, in my case, a new screen already defined called Company Credit Check, and you can see that I've added these fields into the screen. So what does this look like? Well, if I call this Company Credit Check from a system, from a tab within the context of the company, we can see that we've got a screen laid out in here. Now, how I've actually called it from another tab is covered in another lesson, but we can see that if I click on the change button now, we've got the different behaviour that follows the setting that we've chosen for the entry type. So the entry type determines how the field looks and behaves in the user interface. So the fact that we've chosen a date field, and it has that little behavior for the date time lookup or the date lookup. We can see how these fields all behave here. You've got the lookup, and that's obeying, in this case, it's looking up to the company again, and it's also using that search select SQL statement that restricted the rows that we've got. So each behave in a different way within the user interface. So this is all, and we can have this arranged in any way that we may want, because it's completely in our control. And if we have a look in the database, if we press on and have a look at what's happening inside our database, we can see that the Company Credit Check agency, I mentioned that we're storing this foreign key value, has been physically created as an integer. The Comp Credit Check date, it has that behavior to call up the calendar, and we know that we're only storing the date, but you'll see that it's stored physically in the database as a date time field. And we can see that the credit check maximum is a currency numeric field, but you'll also note that there's an additional field has been added into the system to allow the currency ID to be stored as well, and that's an integer. And then finally, this credit check rating is an nvarchar, because it's this list of text values that can be stored. Now, when we choose a CRM entry type, we know, and we've seen, that it gets implemented as an SQL data type. Now, we can understand that entry types can work with different SQL data types. You can see here, for example, nvarchar as a physical data type can be work with an intelligent select as well as a multi-select as well as a selection list. So it implies that we can actually go in and edit a field and then be able to swap the data types. But you'll notice that a date field, like date only, is only associated with the date type, and that means you could only basically change a field that is holding date information to hold date time information, because physically we have to have a CRM entry type or field type that is compatible with the underlying physical data type. Once a field has been created in Sage CRM, if in the database it's an nvarchar, then it could be represented in the interface as a selection list, a simple text field, or a web URL hyperlink.